Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Volcanic Yugioh deck profile for post-Maze of Millennia. The big card that we got was a card actually used by Axel Brody in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime, and that is Bonfire. It is a very expensive card, all for just being a searcher, and that is due to just the pyro support that we have in the new current meta. Sadly, it affects those who want to play Volcanics with a little more power added into the deck, and that being the Bonfire Searcher itself. But I did get a playset from my boxes, so I was very, very happy with that. So I figured I'd bring you all a deck profile for the full power that Volcanics can have. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. For our boss monster, we run the one copy of Volcanic Emperor. It cannot be normal summon or set. It must be special summon from your hand or graveyard by banishing 3 pyro monsters or 1 blaze accelerator card from your face-up field and or graveyard. You can only special summon Volcanic Emperor once per turn, and when summoned this way, you can inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each banished pyro monster. Then you can set 1 Volcanic Trap directly from your deck. Each time your opponent special summons a monster, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. So on top of the burn damage, you also have the setup that you can easily do with your other blaze accelerators that you run in the deck. On top of some of your other plays to go into, you have this versatility that you can rely on with Volcanic Emperor, but you really only need the one copy, being a boss monster and being able to search this card out. We also run the 3 copies of Volcanic Trooper. If it's normal or special summon, you can add 1 Volcanic card from your deck to your hand, so there being the Searcher. And Volcanic Trooper is also searchable off of our new Bonfire spell. So with this card, you can discard 1 card to special summon 1 bomb token onto the field, level 1 pyro fire monster, to your opponent's field. Each time 1 is destroyed, its controller takes 500 damage. You can only use this effect of Trooper once per turn, but the main play is not so much the token, but to set up more in your graveyard by discarding them off of Volcanic Trooper and having a Searcher on top of that when you normal or special summon this card. For our other burn damage, we rely on the destruction power of Volcanic Scattershot. If it's sent to the graveyard, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. If it's sent to the graveyard by the effect of a Blaze Accelerator, you can send 2 Scattershots from your hand and or graveyard to the graveyard to destroy all monsters your opponent controls. So you have that destruction power plus the additional 500 points that you'll get from the other 2 Volcanic Scattershots that were sent to the graveyard. So that's 1,500 points of damage, and it will all add up eventually with the burn damage you can inflict with Emperor, and then just the destruction off of the tokens that you make with Trooper. It all adds up to hit for some pretty big damage against your opponent. Also 3 copies of Volcanic Rimfire. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can activate one of these effects. You can only use each effect of Rimfire once per turn. Banish this card from your graveyard to send 1 Volcanic monster from your deck to the graveyard, except for Volcanic Rimfire. Banish 1 Blaze Accelerator card from face up on your field or graveyard to place 1 Blaze Accelerator continuous spell or trap from your hand, deck, or face up on your field. So this can help to change out some of the other Blaze Accelerators we run. If we have the original, we can use this to at least grab our more powered up Volcanic Blaze Accelerator, or since it says spell or trap, we can even grab our Blaze Accelerator Reload as well, becoming Tri-Blaze Accelerator while in the spell and trap card zone. And then lastly, for the Volcanic monsters, 3 copies of Volcanic Rocket. When it's summoned, you can add 1 Blaze Accelerator card from your deck or graveyard to your hand. So recycle power and just being able to grab the accelerators as mentioned before. And you have the change out power thanks to Volcanic Rimfire, but also this card just helps to send a Volcanic monster into the graveyard to give you more setup for any of your other plays that you may try to do. And then you also can just set up Volcanic Emperor with Rimfire in the graveyard as well to summon back onto the field. With the last of the main deck monsters being the 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, just a hand trap of choice and fitting very nicely with the fire monsters we run in the deck, because even though they did get hit on the ban list, we're still running the Gozen and Rivalry lineup, so at least having the attribute lock means if we have to summon out an Ash Blossom, we can still in this deck. Moving on now to the spells, the most important, not important, expensive part of the deck is Bonfire. We're running 3 copies of this card. You add 1 level 4 lower pyro monster from your deck to your hand. You can only activate 1 Bonfire per turn, but being able just to access any of the majority of the Volcanic monsters that we run aside from Emperor gives us Search on top of Search, because even if we just use Bonfire to add Trooper, Trooper can then add the Emperor to our hand, or any of the other cards if we opened up any of the Volcanics to begin with. So 3 of this card, I know it's pricey if you don't have this card, you can run cards like Foolish Burial Goods as a replacement to this card, or Upstart Goblin. It kind of takes away from the burn damage if you run Upstart, so I more recommend Foolish Burial Goods as a replacement for this card. And like I said, this card was the main reason for me wanting to update this deck to begin with. And then I also want to run 3 copies of Volcanic Blaze Accelerator. I don't know where I put my other 2 copies of this card. I could have swore that they were behind this card in my binder. I have to see where I put them, but I just have 2 normal Blaze Accelerators just as placeholders for it. You activate this card by sending 1 Blaze Accelerator from your hand, deck, or face on the field to the graveyard. You can only control 1 Volcanic Blaze Accelerator, and once per turn during your main phase, you can special summon 1 Volcanic monster from your hand, and once per turn you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls, send 1 level 1 Pyro monster from your deck to the graveyard to destroy that card, setting up the option for your Rimfire to then activate. If it's sent to the graveyard, then you can choose to activate one of the other card effects, switching out your Volcanic Blaze Accelerator, or going for the send of another Volcanic to the graveyard. And I also run 3 copies of Fire Ejection. You send 1 Pyro monster from your deck to the graveyard. Then if you send a Volcanic, apply one of these effects and inflict damage to your opponent equal to its level times 100. So if you send your Volcanic Emperor, just more burn damage, being an 800 burn, thanks to this. Or special summon a bomb token onto your opponent's field. And when it's destroyed, they take 500 points of damage. So just like the Volcanic Trooper, having that additional effect, but just being able to send more Pyro monsters for the setup thanks to this spell. It is a once per turn, but still great for the setup. What's not a once per turn is our Fire Recovery. Target a fire monster in your graveyard, send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard to special summon the targeted monster, and you can banish this card from your graveyard to target 3 of your fire monsters that are banished and or in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, and draw 1 card, which is a great way just to recycle our scatter shots back into the deck, and just having us another special summon, which we can then use by also being able to set up other cards for the send for our card in our hand to get that other monster back. And then I also run 1 copy of Blaze Accelerator and 1 Call by the Grave for some of the 1-ofs that we run in the deck. Blaze Accelerator just as another search to then help to set up our other Blaze Accelerator, being our Volcanic Blaze Accelerator, needing to send a normal one to the graveyard to activate it normally. And lastly, for the spells, 2 copies of Pot of Prosperity. You don't really go much into the extra deck. It mostly relies on the burn damage play, but even some of the generics we could just, banish to get the search off of Pot of Prosperity. If you didn't want to run this, you can always run Foolish Burial Goods in place of this, since we have a pretty good searcher now in the form of Bonfire anyway. And then for the traps, 3 copies of Blaze Accelerator Reload. This card's name becomes Tri-Blaze Accelerator while in the spell and trap card zone. During the main phase, you can send 1 Volcanic from your hand to the graveyard to draw 1 card. And also during the main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard to send a Volcanic from your deck to the graveyard. Now, while we have other cards that I would say that help set up the graveyard much faster, like Fire Ejection, having a card to set up with other cards like Rimfire onto the field, and then just have a draw power while setting up other Pyros in our graveyard is why I still like running Blaze Accelerator Reload. Also 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence on top of the hand trap option, just like Ash Blossom, just my preferred choice of lineup to stop our opponent's monster effects. And then fresh off the ban list, the 1 copy of Gozen Match and the 1 copy of Rivalry of Warlords. If you get lucky and open one of them, it can at least help to shut down a good number of plays your opponent may try to do against you. And then as for the extra deck for the Link 1s, 1 copy of Almirage, 1 Link Karibo, and the 1 Relinquish Anima for the Rimfire Link summons that we can go into using these monsters. For the Link 2s, 1 SP Little Knight, 1 Underclock Taker, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Hida the Fire Charmer, and 1 IP Masquerena for all of our Link 2s. And then for the bigger Link monsters, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Access Code, and the 1 Apollosa. You don't go into them often, but I like to have the options in the deck available, and then also just additional cards to potentially banish off of Prosperity if we have to. For the Xyz monsters, 1 Sylvan Princess Sprite, 1 Baguska, 1 Dweller, and the 1 copy of Zeus. Once again, we don't go into them often, but I like to have the options available. And then as for some of the go-to plays, since we made this deck profile for this card, if you open up Bonfire, it just gives you access to whatever you need for your play. So having an additional setup for that card means you can search out cards like your Volcanic Trooper, and then after you've added the Trooper search will come down to what you may already have in your hand. If you already have the setup power for your Blaze Accelerator, or if you need the additional Blaze Accelerator, Like, let's say you have your Volcanic Blaze Accelerator in your hand already. You can search out the Blaze Accelerator off of the additional search that you would get from one of your other volcanic monsters, since you have to search a volcanic card for this search. So you will then use the search to either grab your Volcanic Emperor or the card that can search it, like your Volcanic Rocket. If you already have the Trooper in your hand, let's say, you can use the Bonfire activation to search out Rocket, because then Rocket can then normal summon out, and then use the Rocket to add your Blaze Accelerator to your hand. Once again, having the other one already in your hand, you will activate this, sending it to the graveyard to activate, and then this will give you a special summon of the other monster in your hand, which would be the Volcanic Trooper. Trooper can then use and search and set up the Volcanic Emperor onto the field, being your bigger boss monster, and then having the card in the graveyard to banish to then set it up on the field. Like I said, Bonfire just gives this deck so much more search. It definitely does help just to grab whatever volcanic monster you may need. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira, Twig out.